the giant from Philadelphia. Before Wilt Chamberlain was a legend, before the 100-point game, the endless records, and the myth of invincibility, he was just Wilton. A quiet boy born into the brick-skinned streets of West Philadelphia, where boys his age learned early to be fast, to be tough, or to disappear. Wilton Norman Chamberlain was different. He didn't disappear. He couldn't. By the time he was 10, he stood nearly a foot taller than most of his classmates. By 14, he was 6'11". His arms dangled like loose ropes, his voice had dropped into a grown man's register, and when he walked into a room, everything seemed to shrink around him. People stared. Strangers whispered. Other children laughed nervously or kept their distance. Wilt learned early that the world didn't know what to do with someone like him. His mother, Olivia, was a stern but loving presence, a woman of faith who raised 9 children and believed that strength came from silence, not spectacle. His father, William, worked hard as a welder and watched his son grow with a mixture of pride and unease. How do you raise a child who looks like he already belongs to the world? Basketball came not as a dream, but a refuge. At Overbrook High School, Wilt found a court that didn't care about his size. It demanded it. With the ball in his hands, the stares turned to awe. Coaches called him unstoppable. Opponents called him unfair. Fans called him a freak of nature, a walking miracle. Yet behind every nickname, the Big Dipper, Wilt the Stilt, was a boy still trying to understand why being different always had to mean being alone. He once scored 71 points in a high school game. Reporters flooded the gym the next day. They didn't ask how he felt. They asked what he was. Not who. Was he the future of basketball? Was he part machine? Was he even beatable? Wilt smiled for the cameras, but the questions lingered. Not about his talent, everyone saw that, but about the cost. He didn't know it yet, but he was entering a life where admiration and isolation would always walk hand in hand. As college scouts circled, and national headlines called him the greatest teenage player alive, Wilt stood on the edge of something enormous. He had dominated every court he'd stepped on, but the game ahead was different. The arena was bigger. The lights were hotter. And the expectations? Colossal. He was no longer just Wilton from Philly. He was becoming a story the world wanted to tell, whether he was ready or not. More than human. At the University of Kansas, Wilt Chamberlain entered as a titan among mortals. The headlines had preceded him, unstoppable, the next big thing, a god in sneakers. But no headline could prepare him for the reality of being too good in a world that wasn't ready for him. On the court, he was gravity itself. He scored at will, blocked shots with lazy grace, and ran like a sprinter trapped in a giant's frame. But in the stands, boos often drowned out cheers. On road trips through the Jim Crow South, Wilt was reminded that dominance didn't shield him from hate. He once walked into a diner after a game and was told to leave. "We don't serve your kind here." That night, he dropped 52 points on the team from that town. It didn't taste like justice. Just numbers. The pressure didn't relent. Kansas fans wanted a championship. The media wanted another spectacle. Wilt, still barely 20, just wanted to breathe. After losing in triple overtime during the 1957 NCAA Finals, reporters didn't ask about his pain. They asked if he had choked. A 7-foot-tall prodigy had become a target for every doubt America didn't know where else to aim. By the time he joined the NBA in 1959, the league felt like a battlefield already waiting for him. He signed with the Philadelphia Warriors and immediately rewrote the rules. Rookie of the Year, League MVP, Scoring Champion, all in his first season. People called it inhuman. He was a machine, they said. He made the impossible look effortless. And that became the problem. When Wilt scored 100 points in a single game in 1962, the world should have stopped. Instead, critics accused him of stat padding. Teammates resented the attention. Coaches whispered about ego. He had done what no one else dared dream, but they called it too much. Too dominant. Too selfish. There was a rival now, too. Quiet, strategic, always clutch, Bill Russell of the Boston Celtics. Russell didn't put up Wilt's numbers, but he had what Wilt didn't: rings, championships, legacy. And suddenly, Wilt's greatness wasn't enough. He was a giant who could carry teams, but somehow not carry them to glory. That contrast became his shadow. Every time Wilt shattered a record, the question returned. But did he win when it mattered? Off the court, Wilt tried to define himself in other ways. Interviews, endorsements, a rare public smile, but the narrative was already out of his hands. He was more than human, they said, which meant he couldn't afford to feel, fail, or fall. As the seasons rolled on, Wilt Chamberlain stood taller than ever, but the pedestal he'd been placed on felt more like a cage than a throne. And deep down, he was beginning to wonder, was greatness ever enough when the world had already decided how your story should end? Alone at the top. The higher Wilt Chamberlain climbed, the lonelier it became. By the late 1960s, he had redefined basketball. His records were etched into history. Most points in a season, most rebounds in a game, most minutes played. But with every feat, something faded behind his eyes. He once confessed to a friend, "They cheer what I do, not who I am." On the surface, he was adored. Underneath, he was tired of being admired but never truly understood. The media called him a showman. Fans called him a force. But in hotel rooms after games, Wilt sat alone, often writing in journals or reading philosophy. He could have been surrounded by adoring crowds, but he chose silence. There's a peculiar emptiness in being everything the world wants, except human. He joined the Los Angeles Lakers in 1968, a team packed with talent, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. Together, they seemed unstoppable. Yet year after year they fell short. The Celtics, led by Russell, always found a way to win. For Wilt, the losses cut deeper than the box scores revealed. He wasn't just losing games. He was losing the narrative. Russell had rings. Wilt had records. The world had picked its hero and its tragic giant. By now, Wilt had become larger than basketball. His off-court life was infamous. Lavish homes, custom cars, and a long list of romantic conquests he didn't hide. He claimed to have slept with over 20,000 women. The media feasted on the myth. But those close to him said it was a shield, an extravagant defense against the sting of loneliness. In 1972, at age 35, Wilt finally won an NBA title with the Lakers. He didn't dominate the way he once had. He passed more, scored less, focused on defense. For once, he wasn't chasing headlines. He was chasing peace. And yet, the victory felt quiet. No parade of vindication. Just a single, satisfying breath in a career of deafening noise. After the final buzzer of that championship season, he looked to the rafters, not with triumph, but relief. "Maybe now they'll see," he murmured. But even then, the comparisons continued. Was it too late? Had Russell already secured the crown Wilt was born to wear? The game had changed. And so had he. As he prepared to leave the sport that had defined him, Wilt faced a truth more daunting than any defender. Greatness, for him, had always been a solitary road. He had never truly played for love, or legacy, or praise. He played because the world demanded he be more than what he was, and less than who he really was. The court had always been his kingdom. But even kings, he realized, can feel like exiles in their own castle. Echoes of a legend. Retirement didn't quiet the myth, it only magnified it. When Wilt Chamberlain stepped away from basketball in 1973, he left behind a game still struggling to catch up to him. The record stood tall, untouched. The stories grew taller. Yet the man himself, free from buzzer beaters and double teams, found himself navigating a life few could understand. He dabbled in acting, flirted with business ventures, and even played professional volleyball. He published books, gave lectures, posed questions about race, masculinity, and the burden of greatness. But no matter what he did, the world kept dragging him back to hardwood. To that 100-point game. To the unstoppable center. To the legend, not the man. His mansion in Bel Air was enormous, complete with a mirrored ceiling, 14-foot doors, and Egyptian columns. Friends joked it looked like something a pharaoh would build. Wilt just smiled. He had nothing left to prove. But late at night, surrounded by statues and silence, he often wondered whether he'd ever been known beyond his shadow. Younger players came to him for wisdom. Akim. They called him the pioneer, the blueprint for dominance. Wilt welcomed them with stories and caution. They'll love